Kitco News special coverage of the 31st Global Metals and Mining Conference is brought to you by Gold Terra.
Hello and welcome to Kitco News with me, Paul Harris. We're at the BMO Metals and Mining Conference in Florida in the United States. And this afternoon, I'm joined by Nolan Watson, President and CEO of Sandstorm Gold Royalties. Good afternoon, Nolan.
Yeah, thanks for having me here.
Excellent. Thank you for joining us. 2021 was a great year for Sandstorm Gold in many, many aspects. 67,000 ounces of attributable gold production, $115 million of revenue, and $27.6 million of net income. Record results for the company. You must be very pleased with how last year went.
Yeah, no, we are very pleased. Records for Sandstorm has kind of been a theme for a long period of time. I think we've had record for production for 9 of our last 10 years. And this year we're expecting in 2022 record production again. So we just continue to do our thing and grow and set records.
That's a good boring record stuck in its track to have, isn't it? What were you most pleased with about last year's performance?
I think the portfolio that we're constructing. So last year, for example, we had a record amount of capital allocated to new acquisitions. So we're continuing to grow our portfolio and bulk it out. But if you look at how we're growing our portfolio, we're not only increasing annual production, we're increasing the average duration of the mine lives. So if you look at our portfolio today compared to last year, we have more annual production, but the mine lives on average are longer because we're buying bigger, stronger, longer mine life assets as we go. So we're able to set records both that way and in duration.
I mean, that's a sign of the increasing maturity of the company being able to do that.
Yeah, as we grow and our cash flow grows, we're able to buy bigger and chunkier assets and focus on larger, higher quality ones.
Okay, let's talk about the main recent news item for Sandstorm, and that's related to Hod Maden. Sandstorm has been a company over the years that hasn't been afraid to go in new directions and try new things. And the acquisition of Mariana Resources in 2017 was a good example of that. And that's the transaction through which you got your exposure to Hod Maden. Now, a few years down the line, you've perhaps decided that wasn't the best way to have exposure to that asset. And you recently announced that you're basically selling that 30% interest in exchange for a $200 million gold stream on the asset. Well, what's that process been for the company?
Yeah, it's interesting. We sort of fell into finding out what Hod Maden was very early days. So back in 2000 and I think it was 15 or 16, we bought a portfolio of royalties from Teck. And in there was this thing called Hod Maden. No one really knew what it was. And our geologists in doing due diligence on that acquisition found this unbelievable asset that was 12 grams gold equivalent with a bunch of copper sitting right at surface, and this incredible asset. And so we looked at that and just said, this is going to produce so much cash flow that it's kind of like a stream by itself. And there was this company called Mariana that owned a 30% interest in it. And we're like, this kind of feels and looks like a stream. It's not actually a stream. So the plan was we're going to buy Mariana, buy the 30% interest, and turn it into a stream. So we in 2017, we made that acquisition. I did a video to our shareholders saying, don't worry, we're going to turn it into an actual stream. And then shortly thereafter, we realized it was going to be a little harder to turn it into a stream than we anticipated. We traded for a few years at a material discount. And because of that, because we're the only material streaming royalty company in the world whose largest asset now wasn't a stream and a royalty. And so we traded it at a discount because of that. And we sort of realized that turning it into a stream didn't make sense until I had it permits at least. Because if you're going to sell that 30% interest and take back a stream, you weren't going to get full value until it was a permitted asset. So those permits took longer. COVID made them take longer, but they finally got its permits last quarter. And we said, great, fantastic. Let's create a new entity, Horizon Copper. We sold the 30% interest into it. Sandstorm took back a stream for $200 million. We don't have to pay the $200 million. We just get the $200 million stream for free. And we took back a $95 million IOU from Horizon Copper as well. It'll get paid back to us over time.
Okay, so from henceforward, Sandstorm Gold is a pure play metals
royalty company. I think the transaction in the end worked out for shareholders, but it really did create an awkward few years in the middle. And we're not eager to do that again. So we're a pure play streaming royalty company. We're going to stay a pure play streaming royalty company going forward. Okay, so
presumably in the quarters that follow this year, you're hoping that valuation gap closes with the rest of your peer group, and you get that full royalty streaming company valuation.
Exactly.
Okay, and to help that along, you've got a share buyback program underway, and you're talking about making initial dividend payments to, I guess, really ramp up your returns to shareholders and push it along to get that full valuation.
Yeah, so over the last 4 years, I think we're probably the only company in the streaming and royalty space, but also potentially in the entire mining space. We bought back over 10% of our company in the open market, and we've just initiated a dividend. So it's interesting if we think about it. We've been able to use our cash flow to grow our annual production, increase our annual mine lives and the types of things we're buying, and buy back our own shares and pay a dividend. So cash flow has turned into a strong free cash flowing machine. We're totally debt free, and we think we're using that capital wisely for shareholders.
Okay, one final let's finally close off the Hod Maden part of things. Within that transaction, Horizon Copper is a new entity being created that's going to hold that 30%. You'll have the $200 million stream with them. But it goes beyond that, doesn't it? You're looking at Horizon Copper being a strategic mining partner for the company. How is that going to work, and what's the vision there?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that we've seen over the last 4 or 5 years in the streaming royalty space is there has been an increase of competition. There are more streaming royalty companies than there traditionally have been. And so you have to ask yourself, what differentiates us? How do I get a better return for our shareholders than what the other streaming royalty companies are doing, which is just sitting there, generally speaking, waiting for investment bankers to phone them, saying that they have a process to sell a stream and a royalty. They'll say your round 1 bids are due on this date, and round 2 bids are due on this date, and highest price wins. And whoever bids the highest price typically doesn't get that high of a return. So what we're trying to do is, we'll still play in those markets and look at those, but we're not interested in doing 0% rate of return deals. We want to actually make money for shareholders. So what we're trying to do, and Horizon Copper is a step towards doing that, is work hand in hand with a mining company partner. They're their own entity, but we'll work hand in hand with them where they're trying to go and buy mines to build their mining company. And we're in the data rooms with them looking at what the precious metal byproduct is worth. So we can say, we'll help you buy that mine by paying for a gold stream on the day that you buy it. And so if they're buying a $400 million mine, we can say, here's a $200 million check for the gold stream. And so we can get higher rates of return for our shareholders, we think, by pursuing this strategy. And we can help mining companies grow their businesses. So Horizon Copper will be a key partner that will help grow, and they'll help us grow.
Will that also enable you to do perhaps similar deals as you did with Mariana Resources several years ago, where you do a deal, there's an asset there, you can put the asset into Horizon, and you just settle with the stream, and everything's nice and clean and tidy?
Yeah, and hopefully now what we're doing is creating the Horizon Copper, so when you do that, you don't have to have the asset sitting in Sandstorm for years and then splitting it out. They buy the mine. The mine never touches Sandstorm. Sandstorm will only have the gold streams, silver streams, that type of thing.
Okay, let's talk about capital allocation. I guess we've danced around it a little bit. You've got the returns to shareholders. You want to continue investing in creating new assets or generating new assets for the company. How do you what's the capital allocation plan?
Yeah, so we've always looked at capital allocation as kind of a puzzle, which is, what rates of return can we get for new deals? What rates of return do we get if we buy our own shares? Do we have cash left over to pay dividends? And so we've decided that we've got enough cash flow now that the dividend piece is solved. We know we're always going to have enough cash left over to pay dividends. So we just paid our first quarterly dividend. We're going to pay one every quarter for here and forevermore. And hopefully what we can do is every year increase that dividend. So it's an ever increasing dividend to shareholders. And then with the balance of the capital we have left, we'll focus on growing our portfolio. But we know that we're in a cyclical business. Commodity prices go up, they go down, they go up, they go down. And when they go down, sometimes companies trade at very low valuations. And if our shares ever trade at numbers where we're going, this doesn't make sense, we'll use some of that capital instead of growing to buy back our own shares. And we just think that's an intelligent way to work through the cycles, to grow your company intelligently, but also allocate your capital in a way that benefits shareholders.
Thank you, Nolan. You mentioned a moment ago that in the business, there's a lot of low ROI deal flow coming through. So, where do you see the stage of the royalty streaming industry? It started to see some calls for consolidation, started to see some consolidation. Is that going to be a driving factor now, that given that the deal flow tends to be lower ROI?
I think that there is going to be a lot of consolidation, not necessarily because of ROIs that are in the market, but I think it's because there has been a proliferation of companies, and the valuations of the intermediate size companies, especially the intermediate size companies, is actually a lot lower than you would traditionally expect. You look at the big seniors, your Francos, your Wheatons, your Royal Golds, they're fantastic companies with great portfolios. They trade at 2 or 2.5 times NAV. But then you look at the intermediates like Sandstorm and Triple Flag and Nomad and Mavericks, we're closer to that 1 to 1.2 times now. And I think there is an opportunity to bolt those pieces together in some machinations and build a company that investors want to pay 2 times now for. So I don't know what's going to happen. I can't predict the future, but I think there's business sense to make that and drive that as a possible.
So you really see the sort of 1 + 1 = 3 or even 5 scenario?
Yeah, I think for the first time you could see that. Before, if you go back 5 years, it was just Franco, Wheat, and Royal Gold, and then Sandstorm. You could combine any combination of those other companies, but they're already trading at 2 times now. They're not going to start trading at 4 times now.
Yeah.
So that it didn't really make a business sense to put those companies together. But now there's a business reason, I think, for some companies to get together.
Okay, thank you. Now, we're in 2022. What are the sort of key goals for this year? Where do you want Sandstorm to be at the end of the year? If everything goes to plan, a little bit of luck.
So 2021 was a record year for us, also for how many acquisitions we made or the total value of acquisitions. I really do think 2022 is going to set a new record. And if I'm right, probably by a lot. I do think it's going to be a very substantial growth year for us. So I'm hoping to exit 2022 is to have even increased our scale and scope that much more, added more mine life, added more production, tried to do it with as little equity dilution as possible. And if we can accomplish that, I think it'll be a good year.
Okay. Obviously, in the precious metals business, we're at BMO, an investor event. Precious metals are starting to rise. Obviously, some geopolitical aspects there, a lot of macro aspects there as well. Do you see that that's going to really push through some project development? Investors coming in as well, really wanting to take projects forward and therefore, creating new opportunities for royalty streaming companies?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting case. Rising gold prices, I don't think are necessarily going to be the catalyst for new projects going forward, partly because sometimes gold prices just rise because gold prices are rising, but sometimes there's a war that was started in the Ukraine and people are worried. And that has really interesting flow-on effects to capital markets, capital allocation, the world economy. And so the access of capital to mining companies to build mines may be affected by that. What I do think is that there is quite a wind at the back of base metals, copper especially. They're just fundamental reasons in the world economy why copper prices have to go up over the next 5 to 10 years. And so I think as you see that take effect, a lot of copper mines are going to come online and be built. And fortunately for us, being a streaming company, there's a lot of gold byproducts and silver byproducts in those copper mines. So where I see a lot of opportunity for Sandstorm is buying gold byproducts of copper mines that are going to be built for fundamental reasons.
And I guess another aspect there, copper mines tend to be $1 billion plus ticket items.
Absolutely, they're much bigger streams. And so it's one of the reasons we're working with Horizon Copper is we really see an opportunity to invest in gold byproducts that are happening from copper mines.
Excellent. Well, I wish you the best of luck there, Nolan. Nolan Watson, President and CEO of Sandstorm Gold Royalties. Thank you for joining us this afternoon.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
And stay tuned to more from Kitco News, BMO Metals and Mining.
Kitco News special coverage of the 31st Global Metals and Mining Conference is brought to you by Gold Terra,